A number of months ago, Deputy Ó Broin launched a public consultation on the private residential rental sector, and the deadline for submissions was this week. So today I'm publishing the submission that we submitted to Minister O'Brien and his department on Tuesday. It so happens that today is also the day when the latest Daft.ie rent report is published. Shows rents across the state up almost 11% on the last year. 23 counties have seen double-digit rent inflation, 8 of those new rent inflation in excess of 20%. And even the 3 counties that have seen single-digit inflation, it's still over 8%, 4 times, should I say, the 2% rent pressure zone cap. It has never been more difficult to be a renter. It's never been more insecure. It's never been more expensive, and the risk of losing your rental home and becoming homeless has never been greater. So it's an opportune time to kind of review the state of the private rental sector and map out a new course. Sinn Féin's view is the private rental sector has grown far too rapidly over the last 2 decades. During that period, we went from about 80,000 properties in the private rental sector to almost 300,000. It's gone from 10% to 20% of the total housing stock. And the problem is, because of bad government policy, too many people who don't want to be living in the private rental sector and shouldn't be living in the private rental sector are being funneled in there. A third of all private renters should be in social housing. They're currently being subsidised by HAPRAs or rent supplement to the tune of €1 billion annually. We have another very significant number of renters who are paying up to and above 40% of their disposable income on rent. Those people should be an affordable rental or affordable purchase. We've seen the reports from a loan and threshold in May showing a very significant increase in the number of older renters with high rental costs and living with great insecurity. And we know about the student crisis because of the lack of government-supported university-led affordable rental accommodation. What that actually tells you is the real problem here is that government hasn't been providing a sufficient volume of social or affordable homes, and until government starts to meet people's long-term housing needs, we're going to continue to have this crisis. What the document we're publishing today proposes is both a number of short-term emergency measures and then longer-term structural reforms. Most of it are issues we've been raising for many years. We do want to see a 3-year ban on rent increases. We do want to see a 3-year refundable tax credit to put a full month's rent back in every private renter's pocket. We do want the reintroduction of the temporary ban on no-fault evictions, and we do want emergency measures to increase the supply of social homes, in particular to reduce the number of singles and families in emergency accommodation. Beyond that, we have a range of policy proposals for restructuring the private rental sector to make it smaller, more professional, more stable and more affordable, but crucially that has to be done in parallel with dramatic increase in the delivery of social and affordable cost rental and affordable purchase homes. So I suppose that's setting out our stall, and we look forward to engaging with the Minister and his department of officials when the Dáil resumes in September.
There's been a slowing down in the pace of the cost of rent in places like Dublin, in the capital. Why do you think that's slowing down, and perhaps is it an indication that maybe progress is being made?
Well, I don't see how anybody could think an 8% increase in rents in the city over the last year is progress. And while some people will focus on the quarter-on-quarter changes, they're not the main indicator. The indicator is the annual change. It is now, on average, for a new rental in Dublin, €27,000 for a year. That is not progress. And in fact, the latest Daft.ie report highlights the fact that rents have increased 30% since Deputy Ó Broin became Minister, and a staggering 155% since Leo Varadkar entered Cabinet and Fine Gael formed office or government in 2011. So I don't accept those people who are parsing the figures to say there's progress. The year-on-year figures show very dramatic increases that are well in excess of the 2% rent pressure zone limit and well in excess of what people can afford. And I actually think this crisis is going to continue to get worse as long as both the parties and the policies that are currently mismanaging the rental sector continue. And that's why, as I say at the end of every press conference that we do, what we really need here is an election, a change of government, and a radical change of direction, as I'm outlining in this policy document today, to start to stabilise the private rental sector, but also give people the social and affordable homes that they need.
Does this document today mean that if the government were to announce a tax package for landlords in the budget, and they've indicated that they might, that Sinn Féin wouldn't support something like that?
We would absolutely not support such a thing. First of all, it would be enormously expensive. There is no evidence to suggest that it would stop the vast majority of those landlords who are leaving the market from leaving, because the vast majority of them, as we know from independent Residential Tenancies Board research, are leaving for reasons other than tax. I have yet to hear anybody explain why a landlord should have a lower rate of income tax than every other category of worker in the state. But also, the census figures released the week before last suggest that actually the picture in terms of the current state of the private rental sector might be a little bit more complicated than the data that we've had up until this point from the Residential Tenancies Board. The census is saying the number of properties in the private rental market is increasing, not decreasing. Now, we do know large numbers of single property landlords are leaving the market, but what the census figures now indicate is that we could also have a number of those properties being bought by new landlords and a significant number of non-compliance with RTB registration. And therefore, before any decision is made on any significant expenditure around the future of the private rental sector, government needs to sit down with the CSO and the RTB, clarify exactly what's going on between the two sets of data. But Sinn Féin, having looked at the issue of a lower rate of income tax for single property landlords for quite some time, are absolutely convinced it will not stop the exit of single property landlords from the private rental sector. It will cost huge amounts of money, and it will create untold issues with other categories of workers who will be asking, well, why am I paying a higher rate of income tax than this other group of income tax earners, when in many cases those full-time PAYE employees are working much harder for every euro they earn than part-time landlords.
I'll just ask you about mortgage interest relief. The regional independents are calling for mortgage interest relief in the budget. So too are Sinn Féin. How would Sinn Féin fund their mortgage interest relief?
Well, the first thing is we've estimated that the cost of a temporary targeted mortgage interest relief would be €400 million. And that money is clearly available from tax revenues as a once-off measure from the surplus. Pierce Doherty obviously will be publishing our alternative budget in a number of weeks, and he'll set out an updated version of that. But the real issue here is if you're on a relatively average mortgage, 150 to 200,000 euros left on your mortgage, the interest rate rises we've seen so far from the ECB are going to be costing you between 4,000 and 5,000 euros extra a year. That's money you don't have. You're already struggling with some of the highest energy prices and food prices and back to school costs in the European Union. So we urgently need a temporary measure. Our proposal, as you know, is a mortgage interest relief of 30% of the increase, capped at 1,500 euros. Our original proposal was for 8 months to the end of this year. We'll launch the revised proposal in the budget. But given the enormous stress and pressure people under, I think hard-working mortgage holders need a break. They need temporary relief, and that's what we've proposed.
This Lee has taxed the banks to fund their mortgage interest relief. Would Sinn Féin consider a similar move?
What we've called for is, given the fact that Irish banks actually have the highest levels of profitability because of the way their loan and deposit books are structured, they're making record profits off the back of record interest rate hikes for hard-working mortgage holders. So what we'd like is government to sit down with us and with others to look at the issue of those excessive profits and find a way of trying to recoup some of those back into the exchequer. All options should be on the table, but whatever option is eventually settled on needs to be designed properly and needs to work on the basis of if there is evidence, which we believe they are, of excessive profits, for a portion of those excessive profits to be recouped by the exchequer, and that could be used, for example, to fund a temporary targeted mortgage interest relief. So therefore a windfall tax should be one of the options considered, but let's have a proper discussion about it first in the run-up to the budget announcement in October.